I can still see the corner in my house in 20 Northmore Road where it happened. I got an enormous pile of exam papers there, and marking school examinations in the summertime is an enormous, very laborious, and unfortunately also boring. And I remember picking up a paper and actually I nearly gave an extra mark for it, extra 5 marks actually. There was one page on this particular paper was left blank. Glorious. Nothing to read. So I scribbled on it, I can't think why. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. I think that was eventually published in 1937.
Long ago, long before the Lord of the Rings films we know today were even an idea, back in a time when J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Hobbit, was still alive. Our story begins in the 1950s, before the film rights to The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings were ever sold. The film rights are essential to this story, since without them, Hobbit movies could never have been made, and the one who controls these rights controls what can be created. In the 1950s, Tolkien had finished and released his second major work, The Lord of the Rings. The books sold extremely well and were loved by audiences everywhere.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
However, not everything was looking up for Tolkien at the time. His wife, Edith Tolkien, who he loved more than anything else, had become ill. In fact, she had become severely ill. Eventually, her illness got to the point that Tolkien and Edith's doctor recommended the two move away from the city to somewhere serene and peaceful, where Edith could rest and focus on recovery. With the money he had made from his books, Tolkien moved himself and Edith out into what they thought would be a peaceful home. Unfortunately, Tolkien and his wife had managed to move into this new home at a very inopportune time, for just down the street, in one of their neighbors' garages, a new source of trouble for Tolkien was brewing. This garage was the birthplace of the Beatles. Frequently, this new young band would stay up late, playing their loud, and as Tolkien saw it, angry music.
Boogie woogie, boogie woogie. Oh, I keep getting my trousers caught on the pedal. I'll take them off.
One of Tolkien's letters described the experience of having to live next to the Beatles. In a house 3 doors away dwells a member of a group of young men who are evidently aiming to turn themselves into a Beatle group. On days when it falls to his turn to have a practice session, the noise is indescribable. Additionally, there are reports from this time of parties the Beatles would have, making even more noise late at night. All of this disruption made it more difficult for Tolkien's wife to get the rest the couple had moved out to this new home for. Tolkien became extremely frustrated with the Beatles. Years later, however, he gained his chance for revenge. With having to pay to move house, support his ill wife, and support his children, money for Tolkien became tight. There was a solution to this predicament though, and it came in the form of the growing film industry during this time period. The massive popularity of Tolkien's books made them a hot commodity among film studios, who were willing to pay large sums of money for the stories. One of these groups, however, struck Tolkien by surprise: the Beatles. As it turns out, the Beatles loved Tolkien's stories and wanted to adapt them into a film that would, of course, star themselves as the main characters, with their own music playing for the soundtrack. Paul McCartney would be Frodo Baggins, Ringo Starr would be Samwise Gamgee, George Harrison would be Gandalf, and John Lennon was insistent on playing Gollum. The Beatles hoped to win the film rights from Tolkien and have their version of the movie directed by Stanley Kubrick, who eventually stepped away from the Beatles to instead direct 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Remembering the great disturbance the Beatles caused in their early days, Tolkien strongly declined their offer. Instead, he chose to pass the film rights along to United Artists. United Artists then sold them to the Saul Zaentz Company, while United Artists maintained distribution rights. The Saul Zaentz Company would eventually become Middle-earth Enterprises, the company that now owns many of the rights for Tolkien's works. Thank you for watching this clip from our mini-documentary on the production of The Hobbit. If you would like to watch the full documentary, select the icon on your left now. You can also watch another clip by selecting the box on the right. Make sure to follow us on social media for more behind-the-scenes content, and to like and subscribe to support Production Chronicles. You can also help support Production Chronicles monetarily with a tip, or you can purchase film-inspired merchandise. All links are in the description. Thank you again for watching and supporting Production Chronicles.